Hey guys, welcome back to Globe Trekker Gaming. Today we'll be moving on to part 22 of our gameplay of Suzerain. Let's get going. So for those who watched the last part, there was a whole crowd of protesters after we reached an agreement with Gasom, which is like an energy company, and I had our guy like speak to the crowd and talk about how they're gonna, exchange for the investment in the company. They're gonna do more for housing and education and healthcare and everything for the workers. And they're over in this region here by Narbel, and apparently it's supposed to be a really poor region. So them, getting the benefits but then reinvesting in the community, I think is something really good. And it seemed like it worked out well with the protesters and like the union leaders and everything. I don't want to appease the union leaders too much there, but at the same time, when we're trying to build up the workforce and build up the community and everything, I think that's a good idea. So it looks like we're back in Whole Sword here. I just want to check the news and see if it shows it. So Gasom's blue-collar support, a win for traditional values. A leader who listens. President's address at Gasom. So yeah, I think it's, the news is starting to really paint him in a positive light, which you gotta actually take action there, but I think overall it's kind of showing that the actions that have been taken are looking good. And I pointed this out like 5 times in previous videos, but this growth here, it's like, yeah, it's still trending down, but it's a much more like flat trend than before, where it was like straight like upper corner to lower corner here. So things are starting to be righted there, but I feel like the game like is gonna try to do that, where it's gonna make it look like things are going better, but then it's gonna really throw some difficult decisions in. So let's just go right to Whole Sword and see what needs to be done. So there's some reports there. I'm gonna really skip those because I don't really quite get the point of those. I mean, yeah, I'm sure it gives information, but like if you pull up one, it literally just gives like, just kind of a brief summary. So I'm sure it's briefing, but I really don't need to look at those. Let's just see what the Stability Order of 1954 is. So to stop the operations of destabilizing youth organizations. So investigation on the influence of the Young Swords and Red youth organizations on the post-assassination is concluded. Both organizations haven't officially organized or called for illegal actions, but several low to mid-level leaders from both links to insightful actions that have led to deaths, injuries, and instability allows us to ban the organizations. I want to ban them, but I'm also for, freedom of assembly and everything. I'm gonna say don't ban, because I feel like I'm probably going to come to regret that there. I'm sure something's going to go on, but I think that shows that he's a president for freedom and everything, and hopefully that scores points down the road and everything. But kind of one of those things I feel like I'm going to end up regretting that decision, but it's been made, so let's move on to the next thing here. So the finalization of the drafted constitutional changes, Groony, regeneration, and... Okay, so this is an act here. Let's see what we have here. So Groony, regeneration, and ecological economic nurturing. So it's been proposed by the Assembly, aiming to encourage a more sustainable approach to industry in Groony. So where is Groony, by the way? Well, that's that one that's like down here, I think. Section 1 would impose stricter regulations on industrial pollution and waste disposal. Businesses not complying will be fined. Section 2 proposes to offer tax breaks that can demonstrate a significant reduction in their environmental impact. I'm going to go ahead and veto this one. Like, I'm totally for environmental, anything that would help with, the environment and pollution and everything. But at the same time, I feel like at this point, like, maybe it'll come back to harm us down the road. But at this point, I really think we shouldn't be restricting businesses when we need the businesses to really get more workers and invest more in the community and everything. So I don't necessarily personally agree with this, but I think this is the best approach here right now. So I had to go ahead and veto that one. So I gotta say, for a personal level, I'm very pro-environment and everything, but I feel like that's the best approach for the game given the current situation. And normally I would say go ahead with it, but we also only have 5 of the government budget, and that's also going to cause more restrictions for the businesses that we need to thrive and hire more workers and everything. So let's go to Whole Sword and just go to the finalization of the constitutional changes, because I know that's been kind of developed, ongoing since I started playing this. So since today was the day to edit and make the final changes for the proposal, the Reform Committee finally bore tangible results in the draft of the changes were about to be presented. I walked in the marble corridors of the palace, thinking about the huge decisions I was going to take. At the entrance, my secretary Olivia greeted me. "Good morning, Mr. President." "Good morning, Olivia. I'll ask how she's doing." "Fine, thank you. More importantly, how are you, sir?" "I'm perfectly fine." "Good to hear." She paused before taking my coat. It looked like she had something on her mind. Mr. Rayne, can you give me a hint about your reform plans? If you ask me, taking away the judge's immunity is long overdue, but it might anger a lot of people. You'll find it with the rest of Sordland. I'll take that into consideration. Nothing's been decided yet, or that's none of your business. I'm just gonna say nothing's been decided yet. I don't want to seem condescending to her, but I really don't think it's her place to ask either. I hope you'll keep me informed. I'll take your coat now. I'm saying that mainly because, you know, as much as she's the secretary and should be a confidant, I don't think it's the secretary's position to really know what's going on in that if it doesn't directly involve the secretary. So not long after, Petter, Lucian, and Nia arrived. Who's Nia again? Minister of Justice, that's right. And she was on the Supreme Court, if I remember. So I remember, like, the way the constitutional amendments have to go is that I think the Assembly needs to have, like, a 2/3 agreement, and then it needs to be at least half of the Supreme Court or something like that. It's either half or 2/3 of the Supreme Court, I can't remember, but the Minister of Justice is a member of the Supreme Court. I think, actually, if I go to the overview here, law, or no, where was it? It's like, connections, so, yeah, here we go, judiciary. So, yeah, it's 11 members of the Supreme Court. Yeah, and I think it was the reformists are the ones that we want to get on their side, and we need to win over these 3 centrists in order to do it, because then it would be 6-5. And the old guard, they're like, nope, they're not changing their minds. Yeah, Nia Mordna is the Minister of Justice, who's also on the Supreme Court. So, good morning, everybody. So, time to finally get this proposal going. So, Petter placed the draft in front of me. After your modifications, we will be starting the process. So let's start. Can we go over each of the points that are in discussion? Let's start. I don't really need to drag on too much about that. So, after placing the committee's report and my own notes in front of me, I buried myself in the papers. So, according to Article 77 and 82, the President may veto a bill by returning it to the Assembly with a written statement. The articles do not contain any information on how to override a veto. So the President has absolute veto power that cannot even be overridden with a supermajority. So I don't want to remove the vetoes, but I think like it sounds like something where, you know, it's kind of a package deal, where if we want to eliminate the Supreme Court's ability to, like, whatever, like, I'm sure it gets to it in a second there, but I'm going to go ahead and limit the vetoes there, just because I think that's, you know, more speaks for the will of the people there. Yeah, it's the Supreme Court's voting rights. So an amendment that has the support of at least 150 signatures may be proposed to the Grand National Assembly. A 2/3 majority vote in the Grand National Assembly and a simple majority vote in the Supreme Court is required for an amendment. Okay, so yeah, this is basically the Supreme Court can't overturn any amendments there. I'm going to go ahead. Yeah, that seems like that's the main point of it. So the President of Sordland is not responsible for the actions performed in the exercise of presidential duties except in the case of high treason or violation. So the President may be impeached by the Supreme Court with an absolute majority of its members. Therefore, the impeachment process includes only the Supreme Court and gives them great power. I'm going to say the Assembly and Supreme Court, because I really don't even see why the Supreme Court should be involved with it. I know, like, some countries, like, think that's how it is in South Korea. Like, I know there's, like, that whole, in the real world, I should say, there's that whole thing going on with the President declared martial law, and apparently there, it's, like, their National Assembly or whatever, like, does the first impeachment, then the Supreme Court removes them. I'm going to say, yeah, so the Assembly and Supreme Court may impeach with a majority in both. It puts Argyle in a worse place, you know, if he gets impeached, but I think it's more democratic there. The appointment of ministers. According to the Constitution, the President appoints the ministers to the Council of Ministers from elected members. We may introduce a confidence vote by adding a line, the President may nominate ministers, which will require a confidence vote, or include the Assembly more in the process with the Grand National Assembly may nominate a list of ministers, which the President appoints. I like that idea. I think, you know, so they nominate them or the confidence vote is required. Actually, yeah, let's do that, because that way it's the President's hand-chosen ones, but, you know, it still has to go through them. Like, I like this idea, kinda, but not for overall ministers, so we'll just do that. So, according to Article 50, a political party needs a minimum of 10% of the national vote to win seats in the National Assembly. The votes of the parties who pass the threshold are redistributed proportionally. Decreasing the threshold may allow the Workers' Party of Blodia and the Communist Party of Sordland to be elected. So decrease threshold to 8 or decrease to 3. I'm going to go 3. I mean, I feel like this could hurt down the road, but I feel like it's more democratic to allow the minority voices to be spoken there. So according to Article 18 and 51, the president's able to issue decrees on political, social, and economic issues that would carry the force of law. Therefore, the president may issue decrees on many subjects without going through the Grand National Assembly. However, the Assembly may pass legislation on the same subjects to override presidential decrees. We may include the Assembly in the process by requiring an enabling act from the Assembly to be able to enact decrees or remove them completely, making the Assembly the sole lawmaking authority. I'm going to say do not change. I like having presidential decrees. So, according to the Constitution, the president shall be elected to serve for 4 years, but there's no mention of a term limit, allowing one individual to be able to run, be elected, and serve as president without limits. I'm going to keep do not change. I like term limits in the real world, but if my guy's doing well, I want to stay in office, so I'm going to keep do not change here. So the Constitution gives the justices of the Supreme Court absolute immunity before the law and describes no procedure of impeachment, making them untouchable. We may describe an impeachment procedure by giving the Grand National Assembly the right to propose an impeachment of a justice on the legal grounds of unconstitutional behavior. Yeah, they should be able to. I'm going to agree to that. And member of honor rights of Tarkin Soul. So the Constitution defines the member of honor title and the rights the members may exercise. A member of honor has absolute immunity and is considered to be a permanent member of the National Assembly. They are given control of their own personal security team provided by the state's presidential guards, and they're eligible to live in a special private residence provided by the state for free. The only person who holds the title is Tarkin Soul. Abolish the member of honor title. I don't think there should be any special things. Like, yeah, I think I want to say the president becomes a member of honor, but I think the presidents before did a lot of shady things, so I'm just going to abolish that altogether. So, are you sure about your decisions? Let me just read through these once more, because I feel like that's really... Let me just go back real quick, just double check. I mean, I feel confident, but I feel like it's really like, oh, are you sure? So, limit vetoes, that sounds good to me. Remove their voting rights, yep. Actually, so the Assembly and Supreme Court may impeach with a majority in both. Yeah. Ooh, this is hard. I almost want to say, like, do not change or may impeach with them. Yeah, let's say that, because that way you can impeach, but it makes it harder to impeach. Actually... Yeah, I'm going to say do not change here, because I think, like, that way he can pick the people that are really going to serve him and everything, and I want to say the confidence vote is required, but I feel like I've done enough democratic, reforms with having that whole, like, the thing down the road where it's, like, the threshold, so I'm going to just say do not change here. So, yeah, this part here, because I feel like we're making it more of a democratic assembly, which, now that I'm doing this, I feel like they may try to do more impeachment things and everything, but, crap, I'm a little, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead with this. So, do not change the decrees thing, do not change the term limits, justices may be impeached, and abolish the title here. You know what? Yep, I'm sure about that. After I made the final changes for the proposal, I showed it to my team. I feel like this may, I don't know, it's kind of one of those things, like, I'm second-guessing everything there, which is kind of the whole point of the game, because you're supposed to make, really difficult decisions and see how it plays out. So, I feel confident, but I'm also second-guessing, but decisions have been made. Let's see what happens with them. So, they read the changes and discussed it amongst themselves. Lucian spoke. Looks like the amendments are ready to be proposed. But I have to say this, too. The new electoral threshold will be really difficult for the party to accept. Our guys are not fond of the idea. Not reforming the minister law will also be frowned upon by the party. The assembly members have insisted on getting involved. That's true. It'll be tough to get all their support. Some of our members may try to openly fight against this. I'll make sure the party follows me. I'm prepared to reconsider. Yeah, I'm going to show I'm still willing to work with it. Like, that was my initial proposal, but, I'm not... As I said, I'm second-guessing a lot of them, so if it requires certain things, I'm fine keeping this. We will do our best to make it work, sir. Any other comments before we proceed? I would say I do not agree with the new law that gives the Assembly the power to impeach the judges. I am also against the Chief Justice and his obstructionist behavior, but even if we get rid of all of them, the new judges will be less independent with this law. They will be scared to go against the administration. They need their protection to do their job, otherwise the new ones will be pawns, just like Soul's old guards. But it's more important that we get rid of the old guards, Miss Morna. After the obstacles are gone, we can strive to make it better. However, you have to be careful, Anton. I'm sure you'll be fine, but with all that's happening out there, we'll need to prepare against these threats one way or another. I'm aware, I appreciate the feedback. The Constitution hasn't changed yet. We'll prepare until then. Yeah, I'm gonna say that because, again, we'll see how things go, and I'm definitely willing to make changes to what I propose there, but we'll have to see where it is. So, well, I think we can proceed now. I will personally work on the wording of this proposal with my hand-picked legal experts. With this Miss Mortimer's reputation as the most experienced attorney, this proposal will be bulletproof. Chief Justice Orso will have a hard time convincing others to oppose it. In the meantime, you must introduce this proposal to our party. You will need to get them to back us if we want it to pass the Assembly. Sir, I advise you to talk first to the leaders of both conservative and reformist wings of the party. As far as I'm aware, Mr. Clavin supports the reforms already, and Mrs. Tory will be the real problem. She became the real heavyweight after we left for the executive. Any advice for dealing with them? Any advice for the speech? I will handle them. Yeah, any advice for dealing with them? As Mr. Vectorn said, Mr. Clavin will probably be easier to persuade. We need to unite the party under this, so his support is vital. Mrs. Gloria will be tougher to break. I thought it said Mrs. Tory. Oh, Gloria Tory, so I think he said Mrs. Gloria. The problem is that she's capable of turning the moderates and the conservatives against us. As much as I don't want to say this, if she makes demands to change the proposal, you may need to give in. Thanks for the advice, understood. I will not give... I'm going to say thanks for the advice. Wish you good luck with the party, sir. I think we can end the meeting here. We all shook hands and they left the room. Okay, yeah, so, looks like we got something going on over in Lockhaven, and something going on back in, Whole Sword there, but, yeah, I think, I'm looking forward to really seeing how this develops, because, it seems like we're now starting to really make some of the more important changes versus just, kind of a bunch of speeches and everything, so I'm excited to see how this develops there, but in the meantime, that should do it for this episode, so thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.